Hey guys, okay, so as many of you might know, and an interesting occurrence is Epic has released all of their Paragon assets, well, a fair chunk of their assets, particularly as to things like their player models and characters and what have you, to general use and a quick and easy download. And if we look over here, since this is the kind of thing I'm into, I've downloaded and installed them into a placeholder project to kind of snag the animations out of this. Now, the cool thing about the Paragon assets is not only has the player models been released, which is interesting in itself for the purpose of harvesting some of the assets that you might want to make use of. For example, the geometry contains some interesting materials like hair and eyes and what have you. You can see down here, for example, an eye overlay or an eyelash overlay is part of the construction, and this particular character contains 17 different material elements. So the use of so by examination, we can tell that okay, well, Epic has determined that 17 material IDs is acceptable for a actual game-ready model. It can be assumed that all of these characters, since they came from Paragon, are considered game ready. So by examination, we can quickly answer a lot of questions as to things like performance and the requirements for LODs and what have you. For example, if we go ahead and take, I think, can we do it with just a skeletal? This is I'm doing this on the fly kind of thing, and as we can see here, if we watch our LOD level, hopefully it will change. Now, this particular character model does not have an LOD level onto it just yet. So we're kind of deviating from the intent and purpose of this tutorial. Here is how to target a different skeleton rather than using the one provided for the purpose of snagging the animation. Now, that's as an animator, that's what I'm interested in, is snagging the animation, because you cannot have enough animations. Now, as a tool, my weapon of choice, being an animator, I do not use 3ds Max or Maya. I use Motion Builder, which is better suited for the purpose of managing large volumes of animation. So what I'm interested in particular, although the material types that are being used on this are usable as things like PBR type of materials in general, like skin and hair and eyes, as to how good they look. Let's decrease the amount of camera speed. So if we look at the eyes, you can see they're really nice. They're not bad, and would be well suited for if you do not need the ultimate PBR type of photorealistic type of material, which we're talking about crossing over the uncanny valley kind of theory, which is making a decision whether or not we won't want our metals to look like metal or what have you. We have a lot of examples now of how Epic does their player model constructions. But as I mentioned, I want the animation. So if I go over to filters and I click on animation and select content, you can see that there is a ton of animations available for all the different characters. There's 10,368 animation sets, which assets, which also includes anything above and beyond, say, animation takes. So let's reset the filter. We'll highlight the filter here, and we'll go to animation, and we'll check animation sequence. Where are they? There they are. and that should just pop up the animation sequence, which there are 9,574 animation sequences. That's a lot of animation. So usually when I get a new asset or some content that involves animations, I like to snag, export them out to FBX, and then import them into Motion Builder, and then apply that data to a characterized rig, which allows me to actually target or retarget the data to our stock rig setup. So as I've mentioned in the past many times, we are using the Genesis 3 framework, so I can quite easily take all of this data here and retarget everything all in one go to the G3 rig. So now I have over 9,000 new animations that can make use of in whatever project that we wish, which is of course allowed by Epic. So this is what an animator is. It's like showing up at the job, and you, as a mechanic for example, and you have your own tools that you can just jump in and do the job. Collecting these types of assets just simply goes into my catalog of different animation takes, and which I have lots of. So when I show up to do a job, the animation requirements are pretty much well done. It's just a matter of retasking the work, the data to conform to to a given particular project. So if you want to be a video game animator, start collecting as much animation as you can and catalog it in some sort of make sense setup. So at some point I'll be taking all these animations that are available here, converting it over to a characterized setup in Motion Builder, and just increased my catalog of animations availability to 9,574. But as to this video here, I'm going to demonstrate how to take this data and just simply apply it to or target it to the Epic rig as to use for the purpose of that particular usability. There's a lot to be said, but that kind of becomes a distraction. So here we have the animations that are applied to this character, Aurora, and as an example of moving this over quickly to the Epic rig with no muss and no fuss, which probably would have taken a couple of minutes to show without the padding, as to that particular need. So in this case, I'm going to be doing this as much as I can in real time, and hopefully we don't have to wait for things like rebuilding of shaders, which I might have to restart this depending on how much time is actually consumed by do nothing video. So here we have our animation sequence, and we want to target. Okay, let's have a little side discussion here. There are two forms of animation management as to the need to move animation from one rigging system to another. One's called retargeting and one's called targeting. Now, targeting means that the rigging is, and everything that is true from one rig is equal to another. In other words, the naming convention that is used in one is equal to whatever it is that you want to move it to. So that's just targeting the animation from one rig setup to another. Retargeting involves when, for example, the naming convention of one rig differs or varies from one rig to another. So, for example, if a rigging setup has been for the hips on one character is naming convention for the hips is called hips, another rig might use pelvis for that targeted, which is equal to the same purpose of use of the original. So there's no difference as to what happens to the animations once this is applied as far as transforms goes. So if we will need the rotation data to be moved from one rig to another, if we have a rig element called hips, and we want to move that over to another rig that has a naming convention of pelvis, then all we have to do is take that data and apply to it. The only difference between the two of them is the target naming convention used is different. So if we put a sphere object and a cube object on the screen and we rotate the sphere, we can take that data and just apply that same data over to our cube by just simply moving the data in lieu of the maintaining the naming convention difference between the two. So this is basically how Motion Builder works. Motion Builder works basically on targeting or retargeting animation data from one rig to the other by establishing a characterization of the two rigs so that the characterizations match up, not the rig itself. So you would be so normally what you would do is you would bring in your character with the animation data that you want on it, and regardless of the naming convention used, and you would characterize that rig, and then you would plot the data to that characterization. Then with the rig that you want to retarget to, you would bring that in and you would create that as a characterized rig, and then you would transfer the data from the characterized rig from A to the characterized rig in character B. Now this is useful information because currently the retargeting feature in Unreal 4 is not very useful as far as being a usable tool directly within Unreal 4, but as a need for a structure, as in being able to create a characterization of where the animation data can go, it makes a lot of sense that this is the preliminary work required, that you can characterize one of your characters and then characterize another one with the same overlay, so to speak, where the data is transformed through that pipeline between the two various different characters. So hopefully in the future, and what's suggested on a lot of streams, is that that's what the direction that Unreal is going, as far as being able to apply animation data to any character that you wish without having to go through the process of converting all of that animation data to your character rig based on a different naming convention. So the solution, of course, has been in the pipeline in the world of 3D in general, as to practical application, to the idea of, hey, let's let the software do the work for us, as opposed to having to go through hours and hours and hours of retargeting data from one character to the other. So let's say, for example, Epic has their animation set. Genesis 3 is picking up a higher level of popularity than it did, particularly since 4.15. So they're starting to follow the techniques that are used in the world of 3D in general and applying them to their engine in a useful manner. And of course this is applied into other areas. For example, proper lighting systems. You talk to a photographer about lighting units as opposed to luminescent values and what have you. So lighting is becoming more, let's say, more real world values. So this is the direction it's heading. So hopefully in the future, this type of stuff you don't have to do, but I'll still do it, of course, because I want the animation. So that brings us to the actual tutorial of what's going on here. Now, I do tend to over talk. Unfortunately, that's to me that has more value of understanding how things work, rather than having a tutorial on what buttons to push. So once you understand the basic fundamentals of how things are supposed to work, say from a top-down design approach, Google top-down, bottom-up, and that'll give you a better idea as to what's going on. But it's more useful to understand how an engine in a car works, rather than knowing that you can jump into it and turn a key and off you go. So in this case, what we want to do is we know some facts based on, by just taking a quick examination of the assets and doing a couple of tests. The realization is the base framework of the Paragon characters are based on the Epic character rig. So that's good. It means that we hopefully already know about the Epic rig and its rules and how to apply animation to that, in by some means, but the rigging in this case is done per character, meaning that each character has its own skeletal rig, and then the animations that are applied are unique to those characters. Now that's not a bad approach, as animation itself is a cheap resource. In other words, instead of coding something, if you want to make a procedural type of animation setup, it's probably faster and more effective just to accomplish that in the animation data rather than doing anything procedurally intensive. Like if we want to turn a head left and right as far as look at goes, that's probably better done in the animation than it is to do it procedurally, unless of course you're a coder, in which case you could probably do something like that in a couple of minutes rather than actually making the animation data. The cool thing about animation data, though, is it can be applied to as many different characters as you want without having to be unique per character. So anyways, what we want to accomplish here is simply take the data that's been applied to this and apply that to the Epic character rig so we can do other stuff with it based on our particular need. So what we know is the base rig itself is compliant to the Epic rig, meaning that the animation data that would normally be done on a per character basis can be targeted onto the Epic rig. Now remember, I just kind of semi-discussed the difference between target and retargeting. So the only difference really is that each of the characters has some form of addition to it that would allow the character to manage the various different assets that have been included as part of the general character. So in this case, our character here, Aurora, has a sword. So we need to be able to as an animator, I need to be able to access directly this particular asset in a meaningful manner. So for example, the character might not always be carrying the sword and may have to sheath it on her back. There isn't an element to sheath it into, but she may have to say, for example, rotate and put her sword on her back, and then start using fisticuffs as a part of a melee type setup. So a bone or an addition needs to be added to that. Now what's cool about the Epic rig, its hierarchy, is that you can have a base rig set up and then apply children bones to it, and it will not affect whatever animations have been applied to the base, and then any animation that is, or a joint that is not available into our target does not have to match up with that bone. So the animation itself will work, except for the problem of having a joint for our sword to manage that. So we would have to deal with that in a different manner. Okay, so moving forward, I found that the easiest way to being able to target this animation to the Epic rig is simply remove the current rig and retarget it as well. We'll show it out as a procedure here. So what we need, though, is we do need the actual Epic rig itself. So there's nothing in here that says that oh, well, actually I do have a third-person rigging set up down here. So if I hit play, well, you can see that nothing happens. We hit stop. Are we playing in viewport? Yeah. Okay, so let's see if we can actually activate a spawn of our character. So what do I need to do? Okay, I need to go to modes, and I need to put a player start. If I hit G, we should now have a player start, and hopefully nothing will explode. If it does, I'll just ignore it and move on to something else. And I already have a third-person game mode. Let's see if that's going to work for us. If I click on that, I hit play. There we go. There's our character running around. Now I want to be able to take our character here, boom, 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 and make use of it in the world. Now there is no animation blueprint that has been applied to it. So what's going to happen is going to be obvious, but we'll get to that in a minute. So if we go down here, And we need the third person blueprints. Okay, there's our character blueprint. If we go to the third person, okay, that's under a different folder. I think that's under, where are you? Geometry? No. Okay. Mannequin. Okay, there it is. So we go under mannequin, we go under character, and we go under mesh, and there is our rig that our third person rig. So we take that information, and we can. Oh well, we won't. We'll do it the hard way. Okay, so we go back to our Aurora character, and we go under characters here, and we go under heroes, and we go under Aurora, and we go under mesh. And there's our skeletal rig for Aurora model. So we want to take all the animation data that's been applied to this. So if we go ahead and we just hit the delete key, boom, boom, and here's all the animations that said, hey, you know, you have all of these different assets that have been applied to this character, that if you destroy this, you'll no longer have a link to this, or none of the montages will work, but we don't care about that. We want the animations, and we'll go ahead and we'll go down here, and we're going to change this reference from to the epic. What was it? UE4 mannequin. So if we select the UE4 mannequin and we go replace reference, it's going to change the reference of the Aurora skeleton, and then delete the skeleton, and all our animation data will now conform to this. This will replace any reference to the pending deleted asset with blah blah blah, and then delete them. Are you sure? Okay, so this will replace any of the pending deleted assets with okay, so yeah, okay, that makes sense. This will replace any reference to the pending deleted assets with UE4 mannequin skeleton, and then delete them. So if we go okay, and we wait for the process, hopefully this is not going to take too long, and then we go save selected. That's delay, selects it, and ta-da, our Aurora rig has disappeared, but our character's still here. So why is that working for us? Because any and all reference to this character, since it does use the base rig, our animations now should change to, did it? Yeah, there you go. See? Boom, boom. We have now targeted the Aurora animation to the epic character rig, and ta-da. Now you can do this to all of the animations in bulk if you wish. So as demonstrated, if I go up to our directory here, and we go to our character folders, and we go to animation sequence, and if we go into each of these classes, and we remove if we move this skeleton, it's going to do the same thing. See, here's all our animation takes. We go up here, we go to UE4, and if we go ahead and hit this, I don't want to change these, of course, and I say, okay, send all this targeted data that has been applied, that we see in here, and apply it to our UE4 mannequin skeleton, and ta-da, all our data has been then moved over to our character here. Now, in theory, we should be able to go to our select game type, and we should be able to go down here and select a new character. Okay, player state. They like to change things around, so we need to change the player. Okay, it used to be a lot easier. HUD class, player control class, maybe player control class, player state. Yeah, okay, I need to get up to date as to the changes that are made. It used to be you could select a different class. Okay, let's say now it should be under here somewhere. Character polymer. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. I'm kind of lost in the changes that are made. It's been a long time that I've actually changed this, but at any rate, you can now change the player base. This guy here that we see. Once I hit play, we can change that to our Aurora, because now everything has been retargeted to the Epic class. So whatever it takes to change the characters now you can be performed, and you can make use of whatever animation BP that has been applied to this character, with the addition of the added animation from Aurora. Okay, sorry if this has gone a little bit long, but it's trust me, it's better to know the what I like to call secret sauce, the details that I could show you the quick and down and dirty easy way of doing it, but you're going to be able to manage an understanding of how things actually work under the hood. You're going to be far better off down the road when you look at this and you say, well, hey, I know this is how things are constructed. So if it's constructed this way, then in theory, this way should work. Okay, hopefully you'll find that useful, and I hope that this hasn't been that long. Okay, bye guys.